sorrow that heaven can't heal. Earth has no sorrow that heaven can't heal. Lay down your burden, lay down your shame. Oh, broken, lift up your face. Oh, under, come home. You're not too far. So lay down your hurt, lay down your heart. Come as you are. There's hope for the hopeless and all those who stray. Come sit at the table, come taste the grace. There's rest for the weary and rest that endures. Earth has no sorrow that heaven can't cure. Lay down your burden, lay down your shame. Oh, broken, lift up your face. Oh, wonder, come home. You're not too far. So lay down your hurt, lay down your heart. Come as you are. Come as you are. Fall in his arms. Come as you are. There's joy for the morning. Oh, sinner, be still. Earth has no sorrow that heaven can't heal. Earth has no sorrow that heaven can't heal. Lay down your burden, lay down your shame. Oh, broken, lift up your face. Oh, wonder, come home. You're not too far. So lay down your hurt, lay down your heart. Come as you are. Come as you are. Come as you are. Come as you are.
Hey guys, I miss meeting together so much, especially today as we celebrate our second anniversary as a church. Jesus has brought us so far and he's been so kind and faithful to us. Over and over again, we've seen him do miracles across the last 2 years to keep us alive as a church and keep us thriving as a church. I wish today that we could gather together and we could sing together and laugh together and share about how we're learning to live and love like Jesus. a few years ago, as I first had the dream and the idea to start this church, and I really started to wrestle through what does it mean to be a church and what do I want this church to be about and to look like. I started coming up with all kinds of different names about what I think our church should be called and what I think the central theme should be. I remember when I started this church, I didn't want to gather religious people and simply teach them to be more religious. I wanted to build relationships with people far away from God and introduce them to the ways of Jesus. I believe that Jesus lived the greatest human life of anyone who has ever lived. And I think that if we learn to live and love like he did, it would change our lives. And ultimately, it would change our world forever. And so I started thinking about what kind of name sums all that up? Like, what could I call my church? And I remember I came up with horrible names, like so many terrible names. One of them was Raven's Nest Church. Can you imagine if I had called it that? None of you would be here. None of you would be watching. None of you would have come. You would have Googled it and said, what's this weird church? And not shown up. But thankfully, I have a wise wife who shot down that idea and many, many others. And so I was wrestling through this, praying through this, thinking about what to call it. And I came across this verse in Job 26:10. It says this, God draws the horizon as a bridge between darkness and light. And the image of that just really penetrated my heart. And I thought, what a beautiful picture. I was like, that's what I want this church to be about. I want it to be horizon. I want it to be a bridge for people in the dark about who Jesus is and how he lived and loved. I want the church to be a bridge or a catalyst to bring them into a light so that they know Jesus and they know what he was about, and so that they can learn to become students of his way of life. That's why the tagline for our church is relationships, not religion. We believe that religion changes the outward appearance of people. They get their behavior together, but the inward part, who they truly are on the inside, actually doesn't change. That's why you have people who memorize a lot of Bible, or they go to prayer meetings or services, and yet they're very hateful people, and they're very cruel, or they're very selfish still. They haven't changed on the inside. But I believe that relationships change people from the inside out. As you have a relationship with Jesus, and as you're in relationship with other people, learning to become students of Jesus's way of life, it changes you at the core level of who you are. Now, this idea, relationships, not religion, doesn't come from us. It's not an original idea to us. I'm not just so smart that I came up with this. This is a Jesus idea, as all the best ideas are. In Matthew chapter 9, verses 9 through 13, it says, as Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the toll booth, and he said to the man, follow me. And Matthew got up and followed him. And while he was reclining at the table in the house, many tax collectors and sinners came to eat with Jesus and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? Now, when he heard this, he said, it is not those who are well who need a doctor, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice, for I didn't come to call the righteous, but sinners. The key verse here is verse 13, where Jesus says, go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. This would have been a punch in the gut to the religious elite, the Pharisees, who were asking this question about, like, why are you eating with sinners? Gross. Jesus says, go and learn what this verse means. He's quoting Hosea 6:6. The Pharisees claimed to be experts on the Old Testament. Many of them memorized the whole Old Testament as part of their religious position. They wanted to be experts of the Old Testament. And what Jesus is saying is, you've memorized a lot of religious facts, but you've missed the key point. He says, if you were truly religious experts, you'd know Hosea 6:6, which says, Yahweh desires mercy, not sacrifice. Or as one translator put it, Yahweh desires mercy, not religion. Or if you want to put it into the words of Horizon, Jesus is always about relationships, not religion. And so we want to be about relationships, not religion as a result. In this passage here, Jesus is walking along. He's just healed a man, and he comes across a Roman Empire tax collector's booth where Matthew, or as some of the other Gospels call him, Levi, is collecting taxes for the Roman Empire. And Jesus walks up to him and invites him to become a disciple, a student of his way of life. And Matthew leaves the tax collector's booth. Matthew's the one writing this story. We have the Gospel of Matthew because Jesus walked up and invited him to follow him. Now, tax collectors in this day were hated people. In fact, what Jesus was doing was he was choosing one of the most hated people in his society to become one of his 12 closest students and friends. And so he walks up to this tax collector and he says, "Follow me, become a student of my way of life." And tax collectors were so hated because, one, they were notorious for skimming off the top to get rich. And so they would come and collect your taxes, but then they would say you owe extra, and they would just keep that so that they could get wealthy. So they were known as embezzlers and as thieves. But even more so than that, they were known as traitors to Israel. They were known as traitors to the Israelites because they were working for the Roman Empire to fleece the Israelite people with super high taxes. So they essentially sold out to the enemy. It would be like if our country was conquered by China, and then I went to work for the Chinese government, and I came to your house and was turning you into the Chinese government who had conquered your land. You would hate me, because I had not only denied my heritage, but I was actively working against my own people. That's what Matthew was about. That's what it meant to be a tax collector. And so these people were hated in the society and the community. Matthew is so blown away that Jesus would even think about him being a disciple. He's like, "I'm not worthy. You should be going to the synagogues and finding a great student of the scriptures to become your disciple, not finding a tax collector." Matthew throws him this big, elaborate dinner party. And who does he invite? He invites the people that he knows, other tax collectors and sinners. Now, the word sinner is weird, right? What do we mean by sinner? That's not a word we use every day anymore. And you don't cut off somebody, or somebody doesn't cut you off on the highway and you say, "You have sinned against me," or someone doesn't stab you in the back at work to get ahead and take the position that you should have had, and you don't say, "Thou hast sinned against me." What do we mean by that? The biblical word literally means bent. All of us are sinners. The Pharisees wanted to point out that Jesus was eating with sinners, but they were refusing to acknowledge that they themselves were sinners. To be a sinner means that we have a self-destructive tendency to do something selfish that either hurts ourselves, hurts other people, or hurts the world that we live in. We all have a tendency sometimes to know the right thing and do the wrong thing. We know we shouldn't say that. We know we shouldn't do that. We know we shouldn't go there, and yet we do anyways. That's our sin nature. And what Jesus is saying is, I came for the people who are willing to admit that they need me. I'm coming for the people who know that they are sinners. See, the religious elites there, the Pharisees, had gotten really good at keeping their sins hidden or concealed. Jesus said, "I didn't come for those who have learned to manage or conceal their sin. I've come for those who acknowledge their sin." The Pharisees, the religious elites, wanted to define these people by their sin, but Jesus never defines us by our sin. He defines us by his love for us despite our sin. Maybe you're somebody who would make a religious person uncomfortable. You're somebody that the Pharisees would say, "Oh, how dare you try to follow Jesus," or "How dare you try to show up at church? How dare you say that you want to become spiritual?" Maybe because of your sex life or your politics, or maybe because of your doubts or your unbelief, maybe because of something in your background or something in your present, religious people would be uncomfortable around you. Or maybe they would even get up and scream and shout and protest you. Jesus would show up at your house and throw a party. That's the type of God he is, and that's one of the reasons that I love him so much. He consistently showed up to meet with spiritual outcasts. He consistently showed up to eat with people that everyone else in society had written off or decided weren't good enough. And one of the things I love about Jesus, as one New Testament scholar said, is Jesus always seems to be at a dinner party, on his way to a dinner party, or just leaving a dinner party. our God, Jesus, Yahweh in human form, really enjoyed eating with people and partying and enjoying himself with people. And just like, remember in high school, there'd be different tables. There'd be a jock table. There'd be like a cool kids table. There might be an AV club table. Jesus finds the table that nobody wants to sit at, and that's where he consistently shows up at. If you're a spiritual outcast, you're exactly the type of person that Jesus wants to hang out with. You're exactly the type of person that he did hang out with in his life. It's fascinating to me that Yahweh in human form, Jesus, seemed to love food so much. It seems to be all throughout his story. He feeds people. He tells us to remember him by taking bread and wine. And in doing this, we're remembering his life and death and resurrection. We call that the Lord's Supper or communion or the Eucharist. Once he was resurrected, one of the first things he did was he made breakfast for his disciples on the beach as they came in from fishing. Food seems to permeate his story. He seems to love eating. And it's interesting, though, he used this very strategically. He always ate with the wrong people. He always ate with the people that other people would have said don't matter, or you shouldn't eat with, or you shouldn't be seen with. Those are the people that Jesus showed up to eat with. And it's interesting, I think eating together bonds people together. There's something psychological that happens when we share a meal together. There's a reason that most first dates start with a meal, because there's something that happens on a human level when we eat together. I think, like Jesus, we need to use our meals strategically. Each of us eat multiple meals a day, and I think we should be using those to eat meals with spiritual outcasts so that we can show them how to live and love like Jesus, so that we can show them the ways of Jesus, so we can let them know how much Jesus loves them. Now, in the years ahead, there will be many things that change about our church. As we continue to grow, things might change. There may be, we may meet in different places. We may do services a little bit different. Right now, because of the virus, things have changed. We're doing services online rather than in person. But there is one thing that cannot change. We must always be a church that is about relationships, not religion. That's a non-negotiable. That can't change. Many other things can change. Many other things we can adapt to, but we must always keep this our central core focus. Do you have questions? Do you have doubts? Do you live a life that might make religious people squirm? Then you're welcome at Horizon. Jesus has his arms open and he says, you are loved. Come and learn to be a student of my way of life. We're all equally in need of Jesus, and we're all beginners learning how to live and love like he did.
Happy birthday, Horizon! Thank you so much for watching. We are glad that you are here. We want to ask that you share this video this week. Just put it out on all your social media platforms. We are celebrating our second birthday, and we just want to celebrate all that God has done in the last year and 2 years. And so if you'll share it with your family and friends, this service, and just online, get it out to everybody, because we want to celebrate with everyone. If you want to give to help support the work that Horizon is doing in the community and across the United States and the world even, you can do so online at horizonphilly.com/give or our Venmo at Horizon Philly. This Wednesday at 7 p.m. we have a Zoom call every week just to connect with everybody, and it's such a fun time just to see everybody's faces, or sometimes people call in, but just to hear their voices. We connect, see how people are doing, and then we pray for each other, and it's just a great time. Easter is going to be online this year, so you can stay in your jammies. You don't have to get all dressed up, not that we do anyway, but wear whatever you want and you can watch online. We ask that you share that post as well. Alex has created a great little picture that just has all the information for our online service, and we're going to send that out to you guys this week, and we just ask that you share it as well. If you want to connect with us, you can do so at connect@horizonphilly.com, or you can call Alex at 484-380-5833. We love you guys and we hope you have a great week. Happy birthday!